So I've mentioned in prior videos that this offseason I will occasionally do some general NBA content that might not necessarily be Bulls related, and it's possible at a later time that I might create a separate channel for general NBA content specifically, as I do want to keep the content here specific to the Bulls. But in any event, last week I came out with a video the day after the Lakers were eliminated from the playoffs after, quite frankly, an embarrassing loss in Game 6 against the Suns, and the video was around why the greatest of all time debate needs to end now, meaning that as great as LeBron is, the debate of him surpassing Michael Jordan as the greatest player of all time needs to cease. And I went all into the details in that video, so I won't reiterate them here. I'll leave a link to it in the description in case you missed it. But man, the amount of comments I received in that video, most people agreeing with me for the most part that yes, Michael Jordan is the GOAT, but of course a lot of people coming at me with charged comments, which is to be expected. But even the ones who are MJ fans and believe that he is the GOAT, the majority of people felt I was way off base in claiming that LeBron was the second greatest player of all time, and that's not even in their top 5. A lot of people were saying. Some even said that he's not even in their top 10, and it got me thinking. We all really need to take a step back. Even if you really hate LeBron, to say that he is not even in the top 10 greatest players of all time is absolutely ludicrous. And so in today's video, I'm going to go over who I believe are the 5 greatest players of all time and my rationale and methodology for how I ranked these 5 players. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bull Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Guys, before I get into the video, I know that this will likely generate a lot of heated discussion, because anytime you're discussing who ranks on the NBA's all-time great list, there's obviously so much left to interpretation, and it is incredibly subjective. There is no clear-cut measure to determine one's greatness on the all-time list. There are so many different factors and circumstances that have to be taken into consideration. So please be respectful with one another in the comments. I cannot tell you how many people just instantly started commenting on my last video, hurling insults at me or at others, all because I said the GOAT debate should end now. Express your opinion. I am always for people disagreeing, and I'm also all for sports banter, but the minute you get personal, that's taking it too far. So please keep that in mind. Now, like I mentioned, coming up with an all-time great list is very subjective, given that there are no established measurements in place that can allow you to put one over the other, that you can say at least definitively anyway that one player is better over the other. Yes, more or less there are ways that you can arrive at such a conclusion of who was the better player, but there are a lot of gray areas when measuring these factors. So for the purposes of how I structure my top 5, I'm basing it on these factors, and this is in an order of importance. In other words, an order of what carries the most weight when determining a player's greatness. Starting with championships, when they were the #1 option. I can't tell you how many times people then throw out, well, the Robert Horry has more championships than Michael Jordan, therefore titles shouldn't matter. Winning in the postseason is another, so not necessarily winning a title, but how often they made it to the playoffs and how many deep runs they were able to make it in their career. So I guess you could label this one as postseason success. Another, their actual dominance in the league and how long that lasted. In other words, how long were they able to be one of the best players in the league over the course of their career. And then other accolades like NBA, all NBA selections, all-star selections, MVP awards, finals MVP awards, defensive player of the year, scoring titles, etc. General statistics, in other words, where do they rank on the all-time list for various stat categories. And then finally, the era of basketball in which they played in, and that does need to be factored in to the overall level of competition that they played against in the specific time period that they played basketball. Oh, and then one other factor, finally, their longevity in terms of their prime at a superstar level over the course of their career. So yes, a lot of factors or measurements that need to be considered when assessing all-time great status, but I think it's necessary to really understand the full picture of what said player brought and accomplished over the course of their career. So keeping all of this in mind, my top 5 players of all time are as follows, starting with number 5, which I'm going to go with Wilt Chamberlain. This one is a bit more controversial because, some feel that Wilt even, really shouldn't be in the top 10 given the weak era of basketball that he played in, going against small defenders, unathletic players, and of course, the day before 3 seconds in the key was a thing, so you could argue that he just cherry-picked most of his career in the paint, and since he basically towered over everyone in his day except for Bill Russell, who was really only his competition, you could say, okay, well, was he actually that good? The reason he scored so much is because he was able to just hang out in the key and not have to worry about getting blocked. Well, the fact of the matter is, Wilt, despite playing in a weak era of basketball, was so dominant for his time. And the way that he was built and played on both ends of the floor, you could argue that he would still be a legitimate NBA player even if he played today. Now, as far as the parameters I mentioned based on their weighting, well, Wilt Chamberlain does have 2 titles to his name, where he was the number 1 option, and he likely would have had more titles, but he also went against Bill Russell, who was an incredible player, and Russell was also fortunate enough to have more talent around him than someone like Wilt Chamberlain did, which, the way that the Celtics, that's why they were so dominant in the 60s. And then as far as Wilt's other accolades, he was a 13-time All-Star in his 14-year career, a 10-time All-NBA player, a 4-time MVP, 1-time Finals MVP, 2-time All-Defensive player, a 7-time scoring champ, and trust me, if they kept track of blocks back in his day during that time period, he would have been a multi-block champion and would likely hold the record for most career blocks ever, and that record would probably never be broken. Just like how his career rebound total will never be broken. He still holds the record for the most rebounds by anyone in the history of the NBA. Of course, Wilt holds the record for most points in a single game with 100. He also holds the highest scoring average for a single season with 50.4 points per game. 50. The guy averaged 50 points per game. We get excited about guys when they drop a 50 piece nowadays in a given game. Wilt was doing that on a nightly basis back in his day. So it's clear Wilt Chamberlain absolutely dominated statistically speaking in his day. He had impressive accolades to go with it, a couple of rings, and I have him number 5 on my list because despite playing in a weaker era, he was such a dominant figure in that period of basketball, and with all of his records, his accolades, postseason success, you have to include him in your top 5 greatest players of all time. Next, at number 4, I have Earvin Magic Johnson, and you really can't put Magic off any top 5 list. I mean, when you look at the guy's basketball resume, coming right into the league and winning a championship as a rookie, and not only just winning a championship, but winning the Finals MVP in his championship run. Never again has that happened when a rookie won the Finals MVP, and it probably will never happen again, to be honest. In his relative short NBA career, since I'm sure most of you know, Magic's career was cut short due to HIV with an abrupt retirement, but in his 13-year career, really 12 years because he attempted to come back and play one last season in 95 and 96 when he was 36 years old, but in that period of time, Magic was a 5-time NBA champion, appearing in 9 finals appearances in his 12-year career, going to 7 consecutive NBA finals. He was a 12-time All-Star, 10-time All-NBA player, a 3-time MVP, a 3-time Finals MVP, and a 4-time assist champ and 2-time steals champ. Magic is 6th all-time in assists and 1st all-time in assists per game, finishing his career averaging over 11 assists per game. Magic was the type of player who made his teammates better. He was one of the best passers the world has ever seen with his top-notch court vision. On top of that, I think people forget that Magic Johnson was actually a decent scorer, finishing off his career averaging 19.5 points per game and at a PER of 24.1. I think it's fair to say that when you look at the number of titles that Magic has to his name, the success that he's had in the postseason with 9 finals appearances and reaching the playoffs every season he was in the league, the awards and the accolades that he was able to accumulate over the short period of time he was in the league, and the dominance of his play in being the best player in the NBA leading up to MJ's prime in the early 90s makes him a clear top 5 player of all time, which is why I have him at number 4. I know some people like to knock on this era of basketball as well, that it was also weak, but come on now, post-shot clock era of basketball, post-ABA merger, the competition was much stronger than, say, in Wilt Chamberlain's day. Not saying that the competition was better than it is now, clearly the level of talent is superior in today's game than it was then, but it was a different style of basketball, a much more physical and scrappy style of basketball. So I hate it when people say the 80s or the 90s was a weak era of basketball because you're comparing it to today's talent level. Sure, overall the players are much more skilled, but the physicality is unmatched from what you see today. Next, at number 3, I've got Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Yes, another Laker, but that's because you can't not have Kareem in the top 5 lists, and there are a lot of people who have him number 2 on their list, and I wouldn't fight you on that point. He has a legitimate claim to being the second greatest player of all time. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, always known for his signature sky hoop, but more importantly, his 6 championships, 5 of which were with the Lakers, and the Milwaukee Bucks, the only title that whole franchise has had in their history. Kareem also saw 10 finals appearances alone throughout his career. In his 20-year NBA career, he was a 19-time All-Star, a 15-time All-NBA player, a 2-time scoring champ, 2-time Finals MVP, 6-time regular season MVP, which is more than Michael Jordan, by the way, 11-time All-Defensive player, and a 4-time block champ. I mean, this guy was elite on both ends of the floor. To this day, he still holds the all-time scoring record, and he's 4th all-time on the rebound list and 3rd in all-time blocks. Now, I mentioned longevity as another factor when looking at a player's greatness, because both Wilt Chamberlain and Magic Johnson, although incredible players with great careers and dominated in their primes, they did not have the kind of longevity that someone like Kareem had, who played 20 seasons in the league, all at an elite level, with really the exception of his final season when he was 41 years old and he was still selected as an all-star that year. I mean, when you're able to be that dominant and being one of the best players in the league for that significant period of time, that's incredible. And it's not another reason why I have Kareem so high on my all-time great list, factoring in all of the other things I mentioned in terms of his rings, his accolades, and record statistics that are unlikely to ever be broken. Now, this is where things are going to start getting a little controversial, and I know this because of the statement that I made that got fans on both sides of the equation heated, and that is I have LeBron James as the second greatest player of all time. Now, me saying this virtually upset everybody, because if you're on the Jordan camp, you felt that that was a ridiculous take and an insult to guys like Magic, Kareem, and even Kobe. And I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of heat for not including Kobe in my top 5, but I'll get back to him in a second. Then there was the other side of the camp of the LeBron fans who feel that LeBron is the greatest of all time. They criticized me for even daring to put him number 2 all time. So I realize I'm not going to win on either side of this one, but for those who can try to view this as objectively as possible, hear me out on this. There are a lot of things that annoy me about LeBron James, which I discussed in my other video on why the GOAT debate needs to end. Namely, his flopping, his antics, his dramatization of everything he does, and I also don't like the fact that he has done some ring chasing, but you can't deny that LeBron James is an incredible player, that he continues to play elite basketball even in his 18th season in the league. Like, that just doesn't happen. Now, yes, he doesn't have as many rings as Magic and Kareem do with only 4 titles, but it's still 4 championships and on 3 separate teams, and he was the number 1 option for each of those. He's a 17-time All-Star, 16-time All-NBA player, 6-time All-Defensive player, 4-time Finals MVP, more than Magic and Kareem, I'll add, 4-time regular season MVP, and a 1-time scoring champ. And guys, he's 3rd all-time on the all-time scoring list and still playing in the league with more ground room to make. He's averaging 27 points per game, 7.4 rebounds, and 7.4 assists for his career. LeBron is without a doubt one of the most well-rounded players in the history of the game between his scoring, his court vision and passing, his rebounding, and defense. You can say what you want about him not making his teammates better. I know a lot of people took issue with me saying that in the last video, but the fact of the matter is, when he left Cleveland the first time, they went from being a contending team to one of the worst teams in the league. They remained one of the worst teams in the league even after they got Kyrie. He then comes back and instantly makes them a title contender again when Miami falls out of contention after he leaves. And then he brought the Lakers back to relevance again after being a bottom feeder in the West for over 6 years. You like the guy or not, that's impressive. Yes, there are a lot of things about LeBron's game that I cannot stand, and it's why I can't consider him the GOAT, because he doesn't have that killer instinct like Michael Jordan did. And yes, whenever he's gone, he's done well, but ring chasing is not something MJ, Magic, or Kareem ever did. Now, as far as the other factors I mentioned, In weighing the success of my all-time great list, LeBron has been to 10 NBA Finals. He went to 8 straight, which is an NBA record, by the way. He's had a lot of postseason runs, good runs, but unlike Magic and Kareem and also MJ, he also missed the playoffs 3 times in his career, one most recently in his first season with the Lakers. That's never happened for the other 3 guys that I mentioned, who made the playoffs every single season of their career. But either way, the postseason success was there for LeBron, given how many deep runs in the playoffs that he had. The longevity was there, given he's still playing at an elite level in his 18th season in the league. And don't forget all of this, the accolades and the awards that come with it. So I'm sorry, I know that this is going to bother a lot of Bulls fans, and I may lose some subscribers, and that's fine. I'm not here looking to tally up subs, but the fact of the matter is LeBron James, love him or hate him, was great in almost everything that he has been able to accomplish in his career. And for that reason, I have him number 2 on my list. And then finally, I think it's pretty obvious who I consider the GOAT, and that would be none other than Michael Jordan. I mean, what else is there to say about his airness MJ that hasn't been said already? 6-time NBA champion, won every finals that he appeared in, 6-time finals MVP, 5-time regular season MVP, and let's be real, he deserved more, but the league gets MVP voting fatigue, as we still see to this day. He's a 14-time All-Star, 11-time All-NBA player, 9-time All-Defensive Team player, a Defensive Player of the Year, I'll add. That's the thing that a lot of people forget, just how good Michael Jordan was on defense, because he's more remembered for his next level elite offensive game. A 10-time scoring champ, no one is ever going to be able to beat that, and a 3-time steal champ. Michael Jordan was elite on so many fronts of his game in terms of scoring, shooting, passing, defense, on and off the ball. Most people will say, he was a prick to his teammates and the media, but at the end of the day, he was hard on his teammates because ultimately he wanted to win. He wanted the best and wanted his team to strive for excellence at all costs. He was the ultimate competitor, the ultimate leader, and the man who globalized the game of basketball. He alone is the reason so many people became Bulls fans in the 90s. He is 5th on the all-time scoring list, and I would argue that if he didn't retire twice, he would have finished ahead of Kareem. And I also would argue that if he hadn't retired to go play baseball, MJ would also have 8 titles to his name and likely more awards added to his already ridiculous trophy case. As great as I think LeBron is, he just can't be put ahead of Michael Jordan. There isn't anyone that compares to his game, how efficient he was as a player, his winning pedigree, his killer instinct, and his obsession with wanting to be the best. Now, there are a lot of honorable mentions who honestly, if other people included in their top 5, I wouldn't be mad about it, as there are legit cases for any one of these guys to be in the top 5 greatest players of all time. Guys like Tim Duncan, Kobe Bryant, Hakeem Olajuwon, Larry Bird, Shaquille O'Neal, Bill Russell, all players with illustrious careers, multiple championships, incredible accolades. I would say Kobe Bryant is really the only one that compares to Michael Jordan in terms of the style of play and his competitive instinct and always striving for excellence in everything that he did. The main reason I don't have Kobe Bryant in my top 5 is because yes, he did win 5 titles, but really he was the number 1 option for only 2 of those. And on top of that, Kobe wasn't as efficient as a player compared to these other guys that I have ahead of him in terms of his shooting, the turnovers that he committed. He has the lowest PER between MJ, Kareem, Magic, and Wilt Chamberlain, and also LeBron. And he also only had 1 regular season MVP to his name. So he's without a doubt in the top 10 in my book, but I couldn't put him in my top 5 with the level of accomplishments from some of these other players. Anyway, guys, I'm going to wrap it up there. The video is already long enough as it is. Maybe I'll have to go and do a 6 through 10 list so I can recognize the rest of these guys who didn't crack the top 10. Let me know if you guys would be interested in that. Until then, be sure to subscribe if you enjoy content like this. Thanks again as always, guys, for tuning in, and I will catch you in the next one.